That feeling, you know what I mean? The way your jaw just clamps down, almost without you thinking about it.
Yeah.
Or that tight band around your head, maybe that ache deep in your shoulders that just won't let go. Maybe it's that churning in your stomach before you have to have a difficult chat. Or just that sudden hot flash of anger that seems to appear from absolutely nowhere.
Right.
Have you ever felt like your body is just screaming these signals at you, but you can't quite figure out what they mean?
Absolutely. And those aren't just, little physical quirks. They are really powerful messages coming from deep inside your physiology.
Yeah.
They're telling you something important is going on sort of under the surface.
Yeah.
Your body, it's this incredibly complex, integrated system, right? And it talks to us constantly, often in that language of physical sensation.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today, that language. We're going to unpack what those signals are really telling us, especially when they're being driven by, unmanaged stress. Because this isn't just about feeling anxious in your head, is it? It's about the profound physical story your body is telling across all these interconnected systems.
Yeah, for this deep dive, we've pulled together, research and insights that look at stress from a whole bunch of angles. We're looking at its impact on your emotional state, obviously, but also digging into how it affects your gut, how it messes with your sleep, and even how it reaches right down to influence things at the most basic level, your cells.
So our mission here is to guide you through this really intricate landscape. We want to pull out the most important, sometimes pretty surprising bits of knowledge from all this material and help you understand the real, tangible, physical ways chronic stress shows up in your life. Think of this as your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed about those messages your body sends when it's under pressure. So let's get started.
Okay, so when we first talk about stress, I think most people immediately picture that sudden, intense reaction, right? The whole fight or flight response.
That jolt.
Exactly. It's an ancient mechanism, brilliant really, built into our biology, designed to help us react instantly if we perceive danger. Think about our ancestors needing to escape a predator. Or maybe for us today, that split second you need to react when a car suddenly swerves.
That surge you feel. What's actually happening inside biologically in that split second.
Okay, so it starts in the brain. Your amygdala, which is kind of like the brain's alarm center, it senses danger and bam, sends a signal to the hypothalamus.
The command center?
Pretty much, yeah. It's a command center for your stress response. And this kicks off a whole chain reaction, mainly involving the sympathetic nervous system and your adrenal glands. Suddenly, adrenaline or epinephrine gets pumped into your bloodstream.
Right.
And this hormone, it's powerful. It orchestrates all these rapid physical changes to get you ready for immediate action. Your heart pounds faster, pushing more blood to your big muscles.
So you can run or fight.
Exactly. Your breathing quickens, getting more oxygen in, muscles all over your body tense up, ready to go. Your senses sharpen, your focus narrows right down, and interestingly, your body's sensitivity to pain actually decreases temporarily.
Wow, that's amazing. So you could push through an injury if you had to.
Precisely. Which is pretty remarkable when you think about it, allowing you to survive a dangerous situation. Because in that moment, survival is the only thing that matters. Everything else gets put on hold.
Right, non-essential stuff just stops.
Exactly. Functions that aren't immediately needed for survival are dramatically slowed down or even halted. Digestion is a classic example. Blood gets shunted away from your gut to power your muscles.
Which explains the butterflies, or that sudden sick feeling.
That's it, exactly. The whole system is incredibly effective, life-saving even.
Yeah.
But only for short bursts.
Okay, but here's the thing, right? Modern life. Our stressors aren't usually those short, sharp emergencies anymore. They're these prolonged, relentless pressures, like a difficult boss you have to deal with every day, or ongoing relationship problems, financial worries, just the constant barrage of news. It never seems to stop.
You're absolutely right. And that's where this brilliant acute response starts to become damaging. When it gets stuck in the on position, that's when we move into the realm of chronic stress.
So the alarm bell just keeps ringing.
It does. When the stress response isn't turned off because the perceived threat just keeps going, your body enters a different state. And this state is managed largely by a different hormone, cortisol.
Cortisol. We hear a lot about that one.
We do. It's also released by the adrenal glands, but its job is more about helping maintain that state of heightened readiness over a longer period. Keeps your glucose levels up for energy, helps maintain blood pressure. It generally sustains the body's alarm state.
So it sounds useful if you need sustained effort, like getting through a really tough project week or something.
In moderation, yes, it can be. But the problem is, chronically high levels of cortisol start to actively suppress functions that, well, they aren't essential in a perceived emergency, but they are absolutely crucial for your long-term health.
Like what kind of functions?
We're talking about things like your immune system function, your digestive processes, reproductive health, even growth and repair mechanisms in your body. It's like your body is constantly diverting all its resources to this emergency fund, right? And there's nothing left for the day-to-day maintenance and repairs.
So things start to break down.
Over time, yes. It leads to wear and tear across multiple systems in your body. This sustained internal alarm fueled by hormones like cortisol, that's really the foundation for so many of the physical signals we're going to explore today.
And I guess one of the places where this disruption is felt most immediately, or maybe signaled most clearly, is our digestive system, our gut.
Absolutely. The gut is incredibly sensitive to stress, largely because of this deep, very complex connection between the brain and the gastrointestinal tract. It's often called the brain-gut axis.
Brain-gut axis, okay.
And stress, which we can define here as any acute or chronic threat to your body's internal balance, your homeostasis. Stress has these profound and often lasting effects on how your entire digestive system functions, from your esophagus all the way down.
So that nervous stomach feeling, that, unease in your gut when you're worried or anxious, It's not just a metaphor then, it's a real physiological thing happening because of this connection.
It is absolutely real. Chronic stress messes with your gut physiology in, well, tons of ways. One of the most noticeable is it alters motility.
Motility, like how food moves through.
Exactly, how food moves through your digestive tract. Stress can either speed things right up, which could lead to diarrhea, or it can slow things way down, causing constipation.
Ugh, neither sounds good.
No, and often it results in these irregular, sometimes painful spasms. Stress also increases something called visceral perception.
Visceral perception? What's that?
It basically means your gut becomes more sensitive. Those normal internal sensations, like gas moving through, or minor contractions that you wouldn't usually notice, under stress, you feel them much more intensely. Often they register as actual pain or significant discomfort.
So every little gurgle or rumble suddenly feels like a major event, like your gut's volume knob is turned way up.
That's a perfect way to put it, exactly. Your gut's volume knob is cranked. Stress also changes secretion patterns. So the balance of digestive acids, enzymes, the mucus that lines your gut. This can impair digestion itself, or it can reduce the protective barrier of your gut lining.
Okay.
And importantly, it can increase intestinal permeability. This is what people often call leaky gut.
Ah, I've heard of that, leaky gut.
Yeah. This is where the tight junctions, the seals between the cells lining your intestine, they start to loosen up. And this can potentially allow things like undigested food particles, toxins, maybe even bacteria to cross from your gut into your bloodstream.
Which sounds not good. Like that would trigger your immune system.
Highly problematic, yes. It can trigger immune responses and inflammation throughout the body, and there's more. Chronic stress also negatively impacts the gut lining's ability to regenerate itself, to heal. It reduces blood flow to the area, which further hinders healing and just the overall health of the gut.
It keeps piling on.
It does. And then you have the trillions of microbes living in our gut microbiota.
The gut bugs.
The gut bugs, exactly. Stress significantly disrupts the balance and the diversity of these really essential microbes. This imbalance, it's called dysbiosis, and it can affect everything from how you absorb nutrients to your mood, even your immune function. It creates this feedback loop that can actually perpetuate both the stress and the gut issues.
Wow. So it sounds like stress doesn't just poke the bear in your stomach. It actively changes the entire ecosystem inside there.
That's a really apt description, yeah. And when you put all these physiological changes together, the altered motility, the increased sensitivity, the leaky gut, the microbial imbalance, you can see why stress is such a major factor in a whole range of gastrointestinal disorders.
Makes sense. Like what specifically?
Well, conditions like inflammatory bowel disease or IBD that includes Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, they're known to be strongly influenced by stress. Flares of these conditions can often be triggered or made worse by periods of high pressure.
Okay.
And then there's irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. That's another huge example. It's characterized precisely by that chronic abdominal pain and the altered bowel habits we talked about. And for many, many people with IBS, stress is a primary driver and exacerbator of their symptoms.
It's actually remarkable how many common digestive issues seem to trace back, at least partly, to stress.
And it doesn't stop there, really. Other functional GI diseases, sensitivities to certain foods, what they call food antigen-related responses, the development or worsening of peptic ulcers, and also gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD.
Heartburn, acid reflux.
Exactly. Those are also strongly linked to stress. The physical symptoms people experience, they're real, they're measurable consequences of what stress is doing internally. There's even a specific type of cell involved in this brain-gut conversation. Mast cells.
Mast cells, what do they do?
They're immune cells located right there in the gut lining, and they act kind of like translators. When stress signals arrive from the brain, these mast cells get activated, and they release various chemicals, things like neurotransmitters, inflammatory cytokines, directly into the gut tissue.
Whoa.
And these chemicals then directly impact gut motility, secretion, permeability, essentially solidifying that brain-gut connection right down to the cellular level.
So stress isn't just messing with nerve signals, it's actually getting immune cells in your gut lining to release inflammatory stuff. That's a really specific mechanism.
It is. And understanding these specific pathways is really crucial if we want to figure out how to manage these conditions effectively. As the sources indicate, for something as complex as IBS, which is so profoundly affected by stress, management often needs a multifactorial approach. It's not just one thing.
Right. What does that typically involve?
Well, it often includes medication to address specific symptoms like pain or the motility issues, right? But critically, it also involves behavioral and psychological treatments that target that brain-gut axis directly.
Like therapy.
Exactly. Things like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, to help change thought patterns around stress and pain perception, or even gut-directed hypnotherapy, which can help calm down that visceral hypersensitivity we talked about.
Interesting.
Dietary changes are often key too, like identifying personal trigger foods or sometimes following specific diets like the low FODMAP diet under guidance. And really fundamental to all of it is patient education and building a strong relationship with healthcare providers so you feel empowered in managing what's often a chronic condition.
So it really highlights that it's not just about trying to fix the gut in isolation, it's about managing the stress that's hitting the gut so hard.
Exactly right. Now, for upper GI problems like GERD or ulcers, while stress is still a major factor, the treatment often focuses more directly on reducing stomach acid, usually with medications called proton pump inhibitors, PPIs.
Right, the acid blockers.
Yep. And also treating H. pylori arterial infections if they're present, because those are a common cause of ulcers. But even in those cases, managing underlying stress can absolutely help prevent the symptoms from recurring or getting worse.
And were there any other, maybe newer approaches mentioned in the sources? Any emerging ideas?
Yes, there's some emerging research looking at other potential supports. For instance, melatonin, which most people associate with sleep.
Right, the sleep hormone.
Yeah. But it's also found naturally in the gut. And it seems to show some potential protective effects on the gut lining itself. And probiotics, of course, are getting a lot of attention. By influencing the composition and the function of your gut microbiota, probiotics might positively influence that whole microbiome gut-brain axis, potentially making the gut less reactive to stress signals. Still early days for some of this, but promising areas.
Okay, so let's bring this back to you, the listener, for a second. What does all this gut stuff mean for you personally? That persistent bloating you can't explain? Those unpredictable, urgent trips to the bathroom? That gnawing discomfort in your stomach that just seems to linger and maybe nobody else really understands? These might not be random issues. They could be clear, tangible signals from your body telling you stress isn't just an abstract feeling in your head. It's physically manifesting in your digestive system. Your gut isn't just complaining. It's giving you a really profound message about the pressure you're under. And ignoring it, well, that means ignoring one of your body's most direct lines of communication.
And the gut, as important as it is, it's just one piece of this puzzle. Stress also absolutely loves to disrupt another foundational aspect of our health, our sleep.
Ah, yes. The classic feedback loop, isn't it? Stress keeps you awake at night.
Yep.
And then being tired the next day makes you much less able to handle stress. It's a truly vicious cycle.
It really is. And it's a prime example of that reciprocal relationship we see between different body systems when they're under stress. Stress and sleep are just profoundly intertwined. High stress levels absolutely contribute to sleep disturbances. And then insufficient or poor quality sleep turns right around and heightens your physiological and emotional reactivity to stress the very next day.
So how exactly does being stressed translate into tossing and turning all night? What's the mechanism there?
Well, chronic stress basically dysregulates your body's natural sleep-wake cycle, your internal clock or circadian rhythm.
Throws it off kilter.
Completely. It messes with the timing of when you naturally feel sleepy and when you feel alert. This often shows up as difficulty falling asleep, even if you feel physically exhausted. Or difficulty staying asleep, waking up multiple times during the night, or waking up way too early in the morning and not being able to get back to sleep.
Right. The 3 a.m. wake-up call.
Exactly. And beyond just the amount of sleep you get, stress significantly impacts the quality of that sleep. It can reduce the time you spend in those crucial restorative stages, like deep sleep or slow-wave sleep, which is vital for physical recovery. And REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, which is so important for cognitive function, emotional regulation, memory consolidation.
So even if you manage to clock, say, 7 hours in bed, it might not actually be the right kind of 7 hours. It's not restorative.
Precisely. You might be getting much lighter, more fragmented sleep. And those stress hormones we talked about, particularly cortisol, play a really direct role here. Normally, your cortisol levels are highest in the morning. They help you wake up and feel alert. Then they gradually drop throughout the day, reaching their lowest point at night, which allows for restful sleep.
That makes sense.
But under chronic stress, that whole pattern gets disrupted. Studies looking at people with insomnia, for example, have found higher cortisol levels in the evening and actually throughout the night. And these higher levels are associated with increased nighttime awakenings. It's like your internal alarm system is preventing your body from fully powering down and resting.
Yeah, that makes total sense. If your body is flooded with these alert hormones, trying to sleep is going to be a real struggle.
It is. And remember those acute fight-or-flight symptoms we discussed earlier?
Yeah, the racing heart, tense muscles.
Exactly. While they're designed for immediate threats, they are completely incompatible with falling asleep and staying asleep. That muscle tension keeps you physically keyed up. The elevated heart rate, the rapid breathing, they make relaxation incredibly difficult. And yes, that stress-induced digestive upset we just covered, that can be painful or uncomfortable enough on its own to keep you awake.
So your body is basically buzzing with energy when it's supposed to be calming down for the night.
Completely buzzing. And here's something fascinating that came up in the research. It seems it's not just the level of stress that matters most for sleep quality, but potentially how you process that stress.
How you process it? What do you mean?
The act of rumination. Getting stuck in that loop of thinking about stressful events, replaying problems, worrying over and over, that might actually be a stronger predictor of poor sleep than simply having stress in your life. What? It suggests that actively engaging with and replaying those stressful thoughts, especially when you're trying to wind down for bed, keeps your cognitive engine revved up and prevents your mind from quieting down enough for sleep to happen.
So it's the mental replay, the churning thoughts, not just the stressful event itself, that's really hijacking your sleep. That's a powerful signal about how we're handling the stress, isn't it?
It really is. Now, let's flip the coin and look at the other side, how poor sleep makes stress worse.
Right, the second half of the cycle.
Exactly. Not getting enough quality sleep has an immediate and pretty significant negative impact on your mood, your patience levels, your overall ability to cope with challenges the next day.
Yeah, everything feels harder when you're tired.
It really does.
Yeah.
Things that might normally be just minor annoyances can suddenly feel like major crises.
Yeah.
And the research backs this up. It shows that individuals who consistently get good sleep actually recover faster and more effectively from stressful events compared to people who are sleep deprived.
Okay, that makes sense. You have more resources.
Biologically, too. Poor quality or just insufficient sleep is linked to higher levels of cortisol the following day and also increased systemic inflammation. So it's literally adding more physiological stress to your system. Fragmented sleep, where you're constantly waking up briefly, seems particularly bad for cortisol regulation.
Fragmented sleep, like with sleep apnea.
That's one example, yes. And also sleeping at times that are out of sync with your natural body clock, like if you work night shifts, or have a completely erratic sleep schedule that also disrupts your cortisol patterns and makes you more vulnerable to stress.
So pulling all-nighters or having a crazy sleep schedule isn't just about feeling groggy. It's actively making your stress response system work overtime, making it worse.
It is. It's just fueling that vicious cycle. And this whole interplay makes you significantly more susceptible to developing specific sleep disorders. Insomnia, for instance, characterized by that persistent difficulty falling or staying asleep, which then leads to daytime impairment, feeling tired, concentration problems. Stress is considered one of the primary risk factors for developing insomnia. And it's very strongly linked to mental health conditions where stress is central, like anxiety, depression, and PTSD. There's even this concept called sleep reactivity.
Sleep reactivity.
Yeah, it refers to how vulnerable an individual is to having their sleep disturbed by stress. Some people seem naturally more prone to stress-induced sleep problems than others.
Right, like some people can sleep through a hurricane, and others wake up if they just start worrying a little bit.
Exactly. Your innate sleep reactivity kind of determines how easily stress can derail your night. And another sleep disorder that's linked to high stress is sleep apnea.
Okay, you mentioned that briefly. Tell us more.
Sleep apnea is a condition where your airway collapses or becomes blocked during sleep. This leads to brief pauses in breathing and these little micro-awakenings that constantly disrupt your sleep cycle, even if you don't fully wake up. It also reduces your oxygen levels.
And that's linked to stress.
Yes, people with higher reported stress levels are more likely to have sleep apnea. The link might be bidirectional, meaning it goes both ways. Some theories suggest the repeated nighttime awakenings and the drops in oxygen that happen in apnea could actually increase stress hormones. Or perhaps chronic high stress might somehow alter the brain pathways involved in regulating breathing during sleep.
Interesting.
There's also a noted link between sleep apnea and PTSD. And intriguingly, treating the sleep apnea often with a CPAP machine can sometimes lead to an improvement in PTSD symptoms. It just shows how deeply sleep disturbance is tangled up with the stress response system.
Wow, that's powerful. Okay, so for you, the listener, if you're feeling constantly exhausted, maybe really irritable, overwhelmed by small things, feeling like your emotional fuse is just incredibly short lately, these aren't just signs of being busy or, having a difficult personality. They could be really strong, undeniable signals coming directly from this sleep stress feedback loop. Your sleep problems might be your body's way of screaming about unmanaged stress, and your reduced capacity to handle daily stress might be amplified by the damage that stress is doing to your sleep quality and architecture. It's a critical system really begging for your attention.
Absolutely. And moving beyond these sort of tangible physical impacts on the gut and sleep, chronic stress also profoundly shapes our emotional and cognitive landscape.
Yeah.
It's not just happening to your body, it's actually changing how you feel and how you think.
Right, the internal experience itself. We talked about the physical readiness of fight or flight, that immediate response. But what about the emotional signals that prolonged chronic stress sends out?
Well, the sources list several key emotional indicators that are really common. Irritability and anger are very high on the list.
The short fuse.
Exactly. This is often explained as part of the body's resistance phase to sustain high stress. The initial shock wears off, and the system tries to adapt to the constant pressure. But this adaptation can often manifest as heightened frustration, impatience, a tendency to lash out or just become easily angered over small things. It's a signal that your nervous system is constantly sort of keyed up, ready to defend itself or push back against perceived pressure.
Yeah, you find yourself snapping at people you care about over really minor stuff.
Precisely. Anxiety is also deeply, deeply intertwined with stress. Stress exposure can trigger anxiety symptoms or make existing anxiety worse. This potentially happens through complex interactions involving stress hormones, like cortisol, affecting neurotransmitter systems in the brain.
Okay.
There's even a concept mentioned called anxiety sensitivity. This is basically a fear of the physical symptoms of anxiety itself, like the racing heart, the shortness of breath, dizziness.
Oh, interesting. So you're anxious about feeling anxious.
Kind of, yeah. You're afraid of the sensations. And since stress increases the likelihood of experiencing those very physical symptoms, it can amplify the anxiety for people who are sensitive to them. It's another one of those self-perpetuating cycles.
Stress makes your heart race, and then you get anxious about your heart racing, which makes it race more. Ugh.
Exactly. And depression also has a very strong link. Research consistently shows that chronic high stress is a significant risk factor for the onset of depressive episodes.
Why is that?
Well, one leading theory is that elevated cortisol levels over time can disrupt the function of key neurotransmitters involved in mood regulation, particularly serotonin. So you might notice overall changes in your mood, feeling more down than usual, losing interest in activities you once enjoyed, or maybe experiencing these abrupt, seemingly random shifts in how you feel from day to day. Volatility.
Are there other, maybe less obvious emotional or even physical signals that stress sends out in this area?
Yes. Changes in libido or sex drive are frequently linked to chronic stress.
Really?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, chronic stress significantly impacts your hormone levels, including those crucial for reproductive health. In women, it can affect ovarian function. And in both men and women, it can lower testosterone levels. Both of these can lead to a decreased sex drive. It's another example of the body diverting resources away from functions deemed non-essential when it perceives itself to be under constant threat.
Okay, that makes sense. Survival first.
Yeah.
Now, moving from emotions to our thoughts, how does this constant pressure affect our ability to just think clearly?
Oh, cognitive function is absolutely impacted. Memory problems and difficulty concentrating are explicitly linked to chronic stress in the research.
Brain fog.
Exactly, that feeling of brain fog. Elevated cortisol levels, in particular, have been shown to interfere with the brain's ability to form new memories effectively, and also to recall existing information. Studies, including some involving older adults, have clearly demonstrated that higher perceived stress levels are associated with measurable reductions in cognitive function. This includes impaired concentration, a reduced attention span, difficulty with problem-solving, planning. It becomes genuinely harder to focus and think straight when your brain is essentially stuck in a state of hypervigilance.
Yeah, that makes intuitive sense, doesn't it? If your system thinks you're constantly in some kind of danger, focusing on remembering where you put your keys or concentrating on a complex work task, that's just not the priority. Your brain's resources are allocated elsewhere.
Precisely. Survival mode overrides higher cognitive functions. And stress also shows up quite vividly in our behavior. The sources point to an increase in compulsive behaviors.
Compulsive behaviors, like OCD.
Well, related, yes. These are repetitive actions that someone performs, often without a clear, logical reason. Things like excessive checking, repetitive hand washing, needing to arrange things in a certain way. There's a long-standing recognition in psychology and psychiatry of the link between stress and either the exacerbation of existing compulsive behaviors or sometimes the development of new ones.
Interesting.
And addictions too.
Yeah.
Whether it's substance use, alcohol, drugs, or behavioral addictions like gambling, excessive internet use, shopping. These are powerful examples of compulsive behaviors that are very often triggered or worsened by stress. They can become these maladaptive coping mechanisms, right?
Yep.
An attempt to numb or distract from the underlying pressure and anxiety.
Right, trying to escape the feeling. So, okay, when you find yourself with that shorter fuse, constantly worrying, maybe feeling down or just emotionally volatile, struggling to focus or remember things, or maybe noticing yourself falling back into old unhealthy habits, or even developing new ones like compulsive checking or excessive scrolling. These aren't just flaws in your character or signs you're not trying hard enough. They are tangible signals. They reflect the immense pressure that unmanaged chronic stress is putting on your emotional and cognitive systems. It's altering your internal state, your thinking, your behavior. Your whole inner experience is like a report card on your stress level.
Absolutely. And these signals, believe it or not, they go even deeper than that, right down to the fundamental building blocks of life, our cells. And this is where the really fascinating research on telomeres comes into play as a potential marker of stress getting truly under the skin.
Telomeres. Right. I've definitely heard that term usually mentioned in connection with aging, maybe cellular health. Can you remind us what exactly they are?
Sure. Think of them like the little plastic tips on the ends of your shoelaces.
Okay, aglets.
Exactly. Aglets. Telomeres are repetitive sequences of DNA that cap the ends of our chromosomes. Their main job is to protect the important genetic information on the chromosome itself, especially during cell division. They prevent the ends from fraying or sticking to each other, which would damage the DNA.
Okay, protective caps.
Protective caps. And every single time a cell divides, these telomeres naturally shorten just a tiny bit, like that shoelace tip wearing down over time. Eventually, when they become too short, the cell can no longer divide correctly, or it might enter a state called senescence, basically, cellular aging, which is why telomere length is often considered a biological marker of cellular age.
Okay, so they naturally get shorter as our cells divide throughout our life. That's normal aging. But how does chronic stress connect to this process? How does stress get involved with our telomeres?
This is precisely what the research is suggesting. Telomeres might be a key biological pathway through which psychosocial stress, the stress from our lives, our environment, our relationships, actually impacts our health at this fundamental cellular level. And the MESA study, that's the multi-ethnic study of atherosclerosis stress, second ancillary studies, provides some of the strongest longitudinal evidence we have for this connection.
Okay, tell us about that study. What made it significant? What did they do?
Well, first, it was large-scale, population-based. They followed a diverse group of over 1,000 individuals for a full decade. But what makes the longitudinal part, the part looking at changes over time, particularly powerful, is the statistical approach they used.
Okay.
They analyzed changes within the same person over that 10-year period. So instead of just comparing a group of high-stress people to a group of low-stress people at one point in time, which can be tricky because those groups might differ in lots of other ways too, right?
Right. Genetics, lifestyle, tons of things.
Exactly. Instead, they looked at how a specific person's telomere length changed as their own reported stress level changed over the decade. This helps isolate the effect of the change in stress from all those stable individual factors that don't change much over time.
Ah, okay. So they're essentially tracking you against yourself. If your stress went up during those 10 years, did your telomeres get shorter faster than they would have otherwise compared to your own starting point?
Exactly. It's a much more robust way to try and understand if there's a potential cause and effect link playing out over time. For the study, they measured chronic stress in two main ways. One was individual level stress. This was about persistent personal problems, things like ongoing financial difficulties, relationship issues, caregiving burdens, things lasting over 6 months that the person rated as moderately or very stressful.
Okay, personal life stress.
Right. And the second was neighborhood level stress. This looked at factors in their living environment, like perceived safety, neighborhood aesthetics, social cohesion, basically, how stressful their immediate surroundings felt. They then combined these scores to classify people into low, moderate, or high total chronic stress groups.
Okay. And what did they find? Was the connection clear? Did stress relate to telomere length?
Yes, the findings were quite compelling. First, looking at just a single point in time, the cross-sectional data they found results consistent with previous studies. Higher levels of chronic stress were indeed associated with shorter telomeres.
So more stress, shorter telomeres at that moment.
Generally, yes. People experiencing moderate total stress had measurably shorter telomeres compared to those with low stress. And those reporting high total stress had even shorter ones. The magnitudes were around 2.7% shorter for moderate and about 4.4% shorter for high stress compared to low.
Okay, so that confirms the snapshot picture we had, but the really interesting part is the change over time, right? The longitudinal findings.
Exactly. That's where it gets really interesting. Using that powerful within-person analysis, they found strong evidence linking stress changes to telomere changes. For any given individual in the study, if their total chronic stress level increased from low to high over the 10-year period, this change is associated with significant telomere shortening.
Significant how? Like measurable?
Yes, definitely measurable. It wasn't a tiny effect. It represented a quantifiable acceleration of cellular aging within those individuals whose stress increased substantially. The study also suggested this effect was primarily driven by changes in individual level stress, those personal ongoing problems, likely because, for most people, their neighborhood stress levels didn't actually change that drastically over the 10 years.
Wow. Okay, so this MESA study provides pretty powerful evidence suggesting that when your personal chronic stress load goes up and stays up for years, your cells literally age faster relative to how they would have aged if your stress had stayed low. That's a profound signal from deep inside.
It really is. It demonstrates that stress isn't just impacting how your systems function day to day. It seems to be leaving a lasting mark right down at the cellular level. Now, there was also a surprising, somewhat counterintuitive finding in the study. It was more suggestive, needing more research, but it adds complexity.
Okay, what was that?
Individuals who reported persistently high stress throughout the entire 10-year study period, they actually seemed to experience less telomere shortening during that decade compared to those who had persistently low stress the whole time.
Wait, less shortening? That seems completely backwards based on everything else. The people who were stressed the most for the longest showed less shortening. How could that be?
I know, it does seem that way at first glance. And the researchers were careful to point this out as needing more investigation, but they offered several potential explanations. One key possibility is that those individuals with persistently high stress might have already started the 10-year study period with significantly shorter telomeres to begin with, due to their prior cumulative stress exposure before the study even started.
Ah, okay. So maybe their cells were already biologically older from years of previous stress, leaving less room for further shortening during the study itself.
That's one plausible theory, yeah. If your telomeres are already quite short at baseline, there might simply be a floor effect, less potential for them to shorten much more over the next 10 years. Another really fascinating possibility they raised is that experiencing persistently high stress over a very long time might, paradoxically, activate certain cellular coping mechanisms.
Coping mechanisms at the cellular level?
Potentially. Some of the research suggests that chronic stress can, under certain conditions, actually increase the activity of an enzyme called telomerase. Telomerase is the enzyme that helps to rebuild and maintain telomere length. So perhaps in some cases of very prolonged high stress, the body's cellular repair machinery ramps up its activity, trying to counteract the shortening effects.
Wow, like the cell is fighting back against the stress.
Kind of, yeah, or trying to adapt. This is definitely an area needing much more investigation, but it highlights that the long-term relationship between stress and telomeres might be more complex than just a simple linear decline, especially over very long durations of high stress. Timing of measurements could also play a role over such a long study.
Were there any other nuances or interesting details in the telomere findings?
Yes. The study also did some exploratory analyses looking at potential gender differences. It's important to note these were exploratory, especially for the changes over time, because the sample sizes get smaller when you split by gender and look at change. But they did suggest some interesting potential patterns.
Like what?
It seemed that increasing individual-level stress, those personal life stressors, was perhaps more strongly associated with accelerated telomere shortening among the women in the study.
Okay.
Conversely, increasing neighborhood stress might have been more strongly associated with telomere shortening among the men. Although, as I mentioned, significant changes in neighborhood stress were pretty rare in the sample, making that finding less certain or precise.
So different types or sources of chronic stress might potentially impact men's and women's cellular aging pathways differently. That's really interesting.
That's the hypothesis the researchers are exploring. They suggested several potential reasons why this might be the case. There could be inherent biological differences in how male and female stress response systems function. The HPA axis, the sympathetic nervous system. There might be differences in inflammatory responses to different types of stress. Or perhaps it relates to how men and women are differentially exposed to, or maybe cope with, individual versus environmental stressors across their lifespan.
Right.
Again, they stressed this needs more research, it's preliminary, but it's a signal that the physical impact of chronic stress isn't necessarily one size fits all. It might vary depending on the specific type of stress, the duration, and individual factors like gender.
Okay. So, stepping back, why should we ultimately care if our telomeres are getting shorter faster because of stress? What's the bigger picture implication here?
Well, because as the research base grows, shorter telomeres are being strongly associated with an increased risk of developing a wide range of age-related diseases. Things like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, neurodegenerative conditions like dementia.
Wow.
The MESA study provides compelling longitudinal evidence suggesting that chronic psychosocial stress, particularly that ongoing personal stress, is a potential biological pathway directly linking our life experiences like chronic pressure, adversity, maybe even social disadvantage to accelerated cellular aging. And accelerated cellular aging, in turn, is thought to contribute to the development of these major diseases over our lifetime. It's really powerful evidence that stress is not just in your head. It is literally leaving a measurable mark on markers related to your DNA's longevity.
Wow. Okay, so let's try and weave all these different threads together now. We've journeyed from that immediate jolt of acute stress to the persistent grinding drain of chronic stress. And we've explored how this shows up physically in our gut, disrupting digestion, causing pain, changing our microbiome, in our sleep, sabotaging our rest and recovery, fueling that vicious cycle in our emotional and cognitive state, manifesting as irritability, anxiety, depression, that feeling of brain fog. And finally, digging right down to the cellular level, potentially accelerating biological aging markers like telomere shortening.
And the key is realizing these aren't separate, unconnected problems happening in isolation. That persistent digestive issue you have, the restless nights, those sudden bursts of anger or feeling overwhelmed, the inability to focus like you used to, and even the underlying rate at which your cells might be aging. They can all be interconnected physical and biological manifestations of unmanaged chronic stress wearing down your entire system.
So the powerful takeaway, the core insight from this deep dive today really seems to be this. Your body is constantly sending you signals. They show up in your digestion, your sleep patterns, your mood, your thoughts, your behavior, and yes, even deep within your cellular structure. And ignoring chronic stress isn't just about, toughing it out when you feel emotionally drained or overwhelmed.
Right.
This material makes it crystal clear that it has measurable, tangible, physical impacts over time. Even stress that might just feel moderate in the moment, if it's ongoing day after day, week after week, it is leaving a biological footprint. Your body is giving you vital feedback, and it is absolutely crucial that we learn to listen.
And just recognizing these diverse signals for what they truly are, not just random ailments or bad luck, but messages, actual communications about the pressure your system is under, that recognition is the essential first step towards doing something about it.
It absolutely is. And the hope embedded within understanding these mechanisms, even the scary ones like telomeres, is that managing stress and responding effectively to these signals is within our power. It's not predetermined.
Right.
The sources we looked at and just the nature of addressing these interconnected issues, they point towards various categories of approaches, don't they? Things like fundamental lifestyle changes, regular physical activity, a healthy diet, which we know can buffer the effects of stress, targeted relaxation techniques, deep breathing, meditation, mindfulness practices, and crucially, knowing when to seek professional support.
Yes.
Whether that's counseling or therapy for the emotional and cognitive impact, or getting medical help for the emotional and cognitive impact, or getting medical help for the physical manifestations like persistent gut issues or sleep disorders that aren't resolving on their own.
And paying attention to your body's signals, it isn't about becoming hyper-focused or anxious about every little ache or twinge. It's more about developing an informed awareness, a compassionate curiosity, maybe.
Yeah, I like that. Passionate curiosity.
What is your body consistently telling you? Is that recurring digestive problem, that ongoing sleep struggle, that surprising irritability that keeps popping up, or just that persistent feeling of being fundamentally overwhelmed? Could that be the signal trying hardest to get your attention right now about the level of stress you're carrying?
And that really leaves us with a significant question to sit with, doesn't it? If chronic stress truly has the power to leave a physical mark deep inside our cells, potentially accelerating cellular aging itself, what is the real long-term health cost of ignoring these undeniable signals from our body? And perhaps more importantly, could truly hearing, acknowledging, and responding to these signals be the pivotal first step towards not just managing the daily pressures better, but actively shifting our long-term health trajectory? Maybe even healing the body from stress's profound, deep-seated impact.